Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Timothy Knowles, and I have the dubious distinction of trying to propel us through the next 84 minutes. We're here today for two reasons. First and foremost, to hear from three of the nation's most influential public servants about how to improve the quality of urban life, and particularly how to use evidence and make evidence a part of what fuels our cities to make them healthier, more interesting, and more productive places. And second, as you may have read in the local newspapers, we're going to share news of a significant University of Chicago undertaking that we are embarking upon, designed to improve the quality of life here in our city and in other cities across our world. Before I go any further, I want to recognize the presence of Secretary Julián Castro and the Mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, and our Mayor, Rahm Emanuel. And on matters electoral, if you're from Chicago and you don't know this, you should leave. April 7th, the city needs your vote. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce the president of the University of Chicago, a person of remarkable vision, an extraordinary leader, and as dedicated as anyone to ensuring the university is a place that creates knowledge that has impact in Chicago and in cities across our country and our world. President Zimmer.
Thank you very much, Tim. I'm very pleased that so many of you were able to be here with us this afternoon for this program. You represent the civic leadership of the city of Chicago and beyond, and your engagement is going to be crucial for us as we work to develop a new model for how to help cities work more effectively. I'm especially grateful that Julián Castro, the United States Secretary for Housing and Urban Development, could join us to share his thoughts on the importance of evidence-based urban policies. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who's been a wonderful partner for the University of Chicago in the work that we're going to discuss today, as well as so much of the work that we've been doing in the city, is here with us, of course, and he will participate in a panel with Mayor Nutter of Philadelphia. We're very happy to have Mayor Nutter back in Chicago and back visiting the university. As a native of New York City and as a scholar who spent the bulk of my career at the University of Chicago, I believe that cities are the most exciting and dynamic places in the world. They have tremendous concentrations of talent and innovation. Young people with great ambition are drawn to cities in order to make an impact. Anchor institutions, including companies, universities, cultural institutions, and foundations, come together with resources and civic will to drive improvement and growth. But as we all know, there is another side to cities. With large concentrations of people come magnified challenges. How do we ensure a good education for all of our young people? How can we be sure those students will graduate into decent jobs? How do we provide families with good housing, with reliable and sustainable energy supply in a safe neighborhood? How do we make certain that lives are not cut short by violence, pollution, and poor health? In short, how can we make cities work better? I'm here today to announce a major new initiative of the University of Chicago that will help answer these questions and enable our partners in the city and beyond to implement more effective policies. Today we are launching the University of Chicago Urban Labs. The Urban Labs will conduct rigorous research on concrete policies and practices to improve the lives of urban residents in Chicago and cities around the world, and of course across the United States. We need to know what works based on data and based on evidence. And when we find approaches that work, we need to be able to replicate them in other cities so we can have the greatest positive impact. The urban labs will build on the successful approach pioneered by the University of Chicago Crime Lab and the Urban Education Lab, both of which have received critical support from Chicago-based foundations. Crime Lab partnered with a local nonprofit, Youth Guidance, to rigorously evaluate its Becoming a Man program and was able to show that this program reduced violent crime arrests by 44%. The Education Lab found that Match Education's high-intensity mathematics tutoring program propelled students up to 2 years ahead. Together, these labs have begun to generate compelling evidence about concrete ways to improve the lives of at-risk urban youth, even when they are already in their teens. On the strength of this research, both of these programs have been expanded by Mayor Emanuel in Chicago and are being adopted by cities nationwide. In addition to tackling crime and education, the urban labs will now launch 3 new labs, addressing challenges in urban health, energy and environment, and poverty. These labs will each be led by a distinguished faculty member from the University of Chicago, whom you will meet in a moment. They will work in their own areas of expertise, but because these problems are complex and interrelated, they will also work together at the intersection of issues like health, education, and jobs. And very importantly for their potential impact, they will undertake their research projects in partnership with cities and with community organizations. The goal will be action-oriented research that can inform policymaking and translate directly into real-time impact. This work would not be possible without the trust of city leaders who give us access to data, to people, and to processes. Mayor Emanuel has made Chicago a leader in this regard. The work would also not be possible without private support. I'm immensely grateful to the Pritzker Foundation for their gift of $10 million to provide seed funding for this effort. Thanks to their gift, Tim Knowles has been appointed the inaugural Pritzker Director of the Urban Labs. This early funding allows us to launch the Urban Labs today, but it also allows us to create a policy innovation challenge to select organizations who are our potential partners. I believe that this combination of rigorous faculty-led research and direct engagement with city and community partners will set our work apart. I want to end by answering the question, why? Why is it important to study cities and make them better as opposed to all the other topics that we could work on? And why is the University of Chicago the right place to lead this type of work? Cities are now growing faster in the United States and around the world than at any time in human history. Today, more than 80% of Americans live in urban areas. More than half the world's population lives in cities, and that number is growing by 60 million people per year. By 2050, the world's urban population is projected to be around 6.5 billion, almost double of what it is today. So it is more important than ever before that we find solutions to the challenges inherent in cities and that these solutions be scalable. The University of Chicago has a long history in urban engagement. We were founded in 1890 through the work of civic leaders in Chicago. We are of Chicago, and we are made better and stronger by the relationships we have built all across the city. We also believe that universities, and particularly the University of Chicago, are critical partners for solving complicated long-term challenges. By our nature, we have a long-term horizon. We are able to work across boundaries to understand the interplay between science, culture, policy, economics, and human behavior. And particularly here at the University of Chicago, we have enormous expertise at analyzing huge streams of data from cities and putting that data to work for everyone's benefit. The University of Chicago is committed to this work. We believe this commitment is part of being a great research university located in a great city. I thank you for your support and your partnership as we launch the Urban Labs. We could not do this important work without you, so thank you. So I would now like to introduce Tom Pritzker, Chairman and CEO of the Pritzker Organization and a trustee of the University of Chicago. He is going to talk about why he is engaged with Urban Labs and this new approach to action-oriented research. Tom?
Thank you very much, Bob. Since this is about the University of Chicago, I thought it would be most appropriate to start with a question. How can we have an impact on society? That should be the question that each of us asks not only of ourselves, but also of the organizations in which we work, whether it's a university, a commercial enterprise, a government, or an individual. How are we making a difference? Last night, Margot and I hosted a dinner with Bob Zimmer and leaders of each of the labs in UChicago Urban Labs. Margot's deeply involved in this initiative, so she drove the conversation. As is always the case with U of C people, it was fun, interesting, and lively discussion, but the common theme was interesting. It was the passion for making an impact on the urban environment on a national or even a global scale. As many of you know, our family's story is an American story. My great-grandfather was little more than a street urchin when he arrived in Chicago at the age of 10. He sold newspapers on the corner of Randolph and Wells. His parents were deeply impoverished, yet soon after his mother arrived in Chicago, she started what she called a nickel society. It required its members to donate a nickel per week to helping others. This at a time when her children could go days without a meal. So let me connect the dots here. Our family has a long and deeply embedded culture of giving back. It's not an obligation. We see it as an opportunity. We do this not only by writing checks, we do this also by spending our time and energy on projects of passion. UChicago Urban Labs is one such effort. It's a huge opportunity for the city of Chicago and for the University of Chicago to have an impact on those who are often neediest in our society. As you've heard, the idea is to help inform evidence-driven policy across 5 key challenges in the urban environment: education, poverty, health, crime, and environment and energy. If we can achieve our ambitions, we'll not only improve our own city of Chicago, but Chicago will stand at the center of excellence in understanding how to address urban challenges. Our ambition for Urban Labs is big. It's to have impact at a scale. In our experience, the key element for success of a startup like this is leadership. The Pritzker Foundation chose to provide the seed money for this project largely because we believe that between President Zimmer and Mayor Emanuel, we have leaders who have the vision and understanding to partner in the success of this initiative. So let me close by thanking not only the lab leaders who are here with you today, but in particular to thank Bob and Rahm for having such passion about making a difference. Thank you very much.
I just want to acknowledge that Alderman Leslie Harrison is here from the 3rd Ward. Welcome. Thank you, Tom. Very briefly, I would like to introduce the directors of each of our urban labs. Their bios are at your places, so I'm going to do an experiment and tell you something that's not there. Brace yourselves. Michael Greenstone, will lead the Energy and Environment Lab. Michael is a professor of economics and has a remarkable track record ensuring his work influences energy and environmental policy and practice globally. He is apparently a very good basketball player, no doubt part of the reason the President of the United States asked him to serve as his chief economic advisor. Marianne Bertrand, where's Marianne? There's Marianne. Is a labor economist from Booth and will lead the Poverty Lab. Marianne has already got more projects in the pipeline than we can count. Here in Chicago, she's been to Los Angeles, she's been to New York. Here, she's collaborating with the city to design and evaluate new approaches to creating jobs as part of Mayor Emanuel's efforts to expand job training and job experience for young people citywide. David Meltzer. David is a very popular professor at the Harris School and with the biological sciences. David will lead our health lab. He's also an actual doctor. He has actual patients. And he comes to meetings with his stethoscope. I'm not kidding. And for me, as director of these urban labs, this is reassuring, for the labs are a startup, and so therefore I worry, as you would, about providing adequate health care. Finally, Jens may have arrived. Jens Ludwig is the city of Chicago's true partner in crime. Jens started the crime lab and later then the urban education lab, and it's his work to make Chicago safer and deliver schooling more effectively, which is really a primary motivator for creating urban labs as a whole. Jens is a pathfinder in the best of senses, bringing evidence to bear to change people's lives at scale. My colleagues are not only superstars in their fields, but what excites me most is to a person, they're dedicated to working hand in hand with policymakers and practitioners. And to a person, they have an unambiguous commitment to impact, to echo Tom. We're also today launching an announcement within the broader announcement, and that is something that we're calling the Urban Labs Innovation Challenge. We're inviting community partners to propose their best ideas for improving the quality of life in Chicago. Specifically, we're soliciting ideas for reducing poverty, for improving health, and improving energy use and the environment. Winners will receive up to $1 million to implement their ideas. The labs will rigorously evaluate their success, and working in partnership with the city will help to scale up the things that matter most. We believe this kind of competition can be catalytic. The Crime Lab's first competition led to Becoming a Man, which, thanks to the mayor, now serves young people across the city and is being adopted by cities across the country. Just last month, the Crime Lab announced its second competition, and it invited proposals for the best ideas to make our city safer. And on Friday, just last Friday, we had received 227 proposals. The challenge we're announcing today aims to inspire the same level of ingenuity and engagement and help Chicago discover new ways to create jobs, to improve the environment, and make Chicago healthier for all of us. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce the Secretary, Julián Castro, of the Housing and Urban Development, the former mayor of San Antonio, and dare I say, a rock star on our national landscape. Secretary Castro was appointed to the cabinet in 2014. He is a leader in using performance-driven approaches to expand opportunities, both in his hometown of San Antonio and now for the nation. And his experience makes him a perfect guest to talk with us about the power of evidence to improve the quality of city life. Please join me in welcoming the Secretary.
Thank you very much, Tim. Good afternoon. Thank you, Tim, for your kind introduction and for all of your magnificent work to make this day possible and for all the great work I know that is to come. You and I share two things, at least in common. We both have a passion for urban policy, and both of us serve presidents who call Chicago home. I'm glad that these common bonds have brought us together today, and I deeply appreciate your efforts. I'd also like to thank President Zimmer for his outstanding contributions. Mr. President, I'm not going to pretend that I've read your book, Ergodic Theory and Semi-Simple Groups. But I can say without reservation that your service is making a profound difference here in Chicago and our nation and beyond. I also want to express my appreciation to Tom Pritzker for his generous contribution and for all the wonderful work that you and the foundation are doing to make a difference. And want to thank Mayor Emanuel for having me in his hometown. He is a rock star mayor and is doing wonderful work here in Chicago, and I'm grateful for all that he has accomplished in housing and urban policy and beyond. Thank you, Rahm, for having us. I also want to give a shout out to, this guy is like the unofficial dean of mayors in the United States, Mayor Nutter from Philadelphia. I know this as a former mayor, so well respected, doing amazing work, and I enjoyed my visit to Philadelphia a few months ago. Thank you, Michael, for your great work. And then finally, let me thank all of you, the University of Chicago community. This institution is, goes without saying, one of America's jewels of our higher education system, one that has done so much fantastic work across fields. HUD is proud to work with you on a number of efforts, including preparations for next year's Habitat 3, the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development. And it's a pleasure to be with you to celebrate the launch of this Urban Labs initiative. This launch comes at a perfect time for both the United States and the world. We are, in 2015, in this century, living in a century of cities. The global urban population is expected to nearly double by the year 2050. The highest rate of urbanization, as President Zimmer noted, in human history. Here in the United States, by 2050, it's estimated that the population will grow by 80 million, and that 60 million of those folks are likely to live in America's urban communities. On one hand, this presents us with new and incredible opportunities to strengthen human connections, to enhance our cultural bonds, and to speak transformatively about economic growth. On the other hand, though, it also presents us with challenges that need to be dealt with smartly in areas ranging from energy to health to education. So we've got to act today in order to prepare for tomorrow. And this requires more than just effort and commitment. It requires deep understanding and precise knowledge. To paraphrase a favorite son of this great state of Illinois, Abraham Lincoln, it's the duty of every person to be wiser today than he or she was yesterday. We must always use all the tools at our disposal to explore the great issues of our time, to test out promising new approaches, to evaluate their impact, and to apply what we learn
to actually shape policy. That's what makes your work with evidence-based policy so fundamentally exciting and important. Your research will help light the way forward, and all of us at HUD are thrilled about this new effort. The issues that you're focusing on, education, crime, poverty, health, energy, and the environment, are deeply interconnected with housing and urban development, and we're eager to partner with you. Helping to create thriving urban places has been our fundamental mission since the Department of Housing and Urban Development was created in 1965. 50 years ago, when President Johnson signed the act that created HUD, he said that our work could, quote, give every family a home of dignity, a neighborhood of pride, and a community of opportunity. Today, we call ourselves the Department of Opportunity, and every day we work block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, to fulfill this promise, to help build cities that are rich with possibility, places where folks can bring their big dreams and bold ideas to life. But the way we're doing this is and must be different from years past because our resources simply haven't kept up with the needs of those we serve. In fact, today, there are 7.7 million folks in the United States who are low income, who are not receiving any government assistance, who are spending more than 50% of their income on rent, or living in substandard housing, or both. This is up nearly 50% since 2003. Meanwhile, funding for traditional programs that have helped create more affordable housing, like CDBG and our Home Initiative, has been cut in half since 2010. Our CDBG initiative has been cut by 25%. And at HUD, since 1981, the number of employees has gone down by half. So we're increasingly relying on evidence-based practices to ensure that we're investing in what's working and making adjustments where we see that something's not. We have our own in-house policy development and research team that conducts rigorous evaluations of HUD's programs. It analyzes data and ultimately helps us deploy resources in a way that best supports families and entire communities. For example, as many of you know, our Choice Neighborhoods initiative was launched to turn poverty areas into areas of prosperity. Right now, there are communities across the nation where development has been too limited, investment has been too scarce, and struggle has been too familiar for its residents. So we launched Choice Neighborhoods in 2010 to help local leaders from all sectors break through the silos, work together amongst themselves and the federal government with a big picture approach to revitalize communities holistically. And right now, we're managing a study of the first 5 recipients of our biggest choice grants, and the verdict is in that this effort is working. Take areas like the Woodlawn neighborhood here in Chicago. As many of you know from your own involvement, the Woodlawn Choice Project has taken a $30 million grant and leveraged it for another $380 million in investment. It's taken blighted, abandoned structures and turning them into symbols of progress and improvements in quality of life. We know from research that Choice Neighborhood is one answer to complex urban challenges, and we want this answer to be available to Americans for generations to come. Another example is a program that we call Jobs Plus. It's designed to provide public housing residents with intensive job training, rent incentives, and a community of support. Our research has demonstrated that this effectively incentivizes public housing residents to get the job training that they need to acquire the resources to move up and out. This initiative is currently active in 10 cities. It continues to be analyzed, and HUD has made a $100 million request
in the budget to expand it even more. So the bottom line is that evidence-based policy is producing results. I know it's doing the same for partners in all sectors. And that's why I'm excited to join you today as you launch Urban Labs. You're going to provide us and so many others with the evidence we need to make the sharpest, most informed decisions possible. Your work will continue to add to our collective understanding on a wide range of issues, and ultimately be a powerful force to ensure that this century of cities is full of widespread opportunity for so many Americans. Because ultimately we know that aside from the studies and the statistics and the analyses, all of this investment in work is really about one thing: the people that we serve. I want to thank you for the privilege of joining you for the launch of Urban Labs. I know that your efforts will help shape the next chapter of urban development, and I look forward to our continued work together to protect and enhance the American city's role as a place of possibility and prosperity, and the role that the University of Chicago has in making our cities even greater. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and thanks for sticking around for the second part of the event here. I'm Roseanna Ander, and I'm the director of the University of Chicago Crime Lab and the Urban Education Lab, and also thrilled to be adding to that the title of Senior Director for Urban Labs. I'm also delighted to be here today for the opportunity to speak with two municipal leaders who really do embody the Urban Labs commitment to advancing evidence-informed strategies and to improve the quality of urban life, and in particular, the lives of the most vulnerable and disadvantaged residents. First, I'm pleased to welcome Mayor Michael Nutter of Philadelphia. He was re-elected in 2011 to his second and sadly final term. They have term limits in Philadelphia. And has been mayor of his hometown since then. Mayor Nutter is advancing an ambitious agenda for America's fifth largest city. He's devising the city's innovative school reform strategy, which I hope we'll get to talk a little bit about the progress that's been made. And most recently, and headline generating, calling for a 9% property tax to increase support to city schools. He's also vowed to strengthen community policing in Philadelphia through an initiative called Philly Rising, a partnership between vulnerable neighborhoods and the city. Mayor Nutter's police commissioner, Charles Ramsey, was recently tapped to co-chair President Obama's Task Force on 21st Century Policing following the tragedies in Ferguson and elsewhere. I'm also pleased to welcome Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Mayor Emanuel has served as the city's 55th mayor since 2011. During his time as mayor, he's worked to secure Chicago's future as a global city and to improve the quality of life of our city's residents. On the issue of public safety, he has expanded prevention programs for at-risk youth and pushed for smarter policing strategies and put public resources into programs like Safe Passage, which tap local parents and community members to keep youth safe and on their path to and from school. Let me start by asking each of you, starting with Mayor Emanuel, to offer just a few opening comments on today's announcement.
Well, first of all, I want to say to the entire Pritzker family, thank you, and to the University of Chicago for once again being a key intellectual foundation for the city of Chicago, and if I can, thank you again. Second, just a couple things about what we're trying to do and how the lab has been helpful and why I think this pressed forward. Across the world, there's 100 cities that are driving the intellectual, economic, and cultural energy of the world economy. Chicago, by way of example, if it was Chicago metropolitan area, is the 22nd largest economy in the world. We could join the G20 if we so chose. Not that we're going to do that. Too many responsibilities. But the goal and the effort here is how to make sure that while you are driving the economically, culturally, and intellectual energy, how everybody in that city can participate. Because you don't want to have enclaves of just that success cut off from everybody else, and that's why I think this institute, if cities are going to grow not just population-wise, how everybody can participate in that kind of excellence and that potential that's there. A lot of the education system that's worked on, and we have been beneficiaries of this, and I'll give you a couple examples here in Chicago. One is, without a doubt, the U of C did a study on the Bachelor IB program and how it was better, International Baccalaureate, how it was better at preparing kids for Ivy League schools and for college. I hope that's not an editorial on the IB program. And by 40%. So now the city of Chicago has the largest IB program in the country. And every one of the schools that have both the program or their full IB, like Lincoln and Senn, they're seeing dramatic improvements in their on-track graduation rates, better than the citywide overall average. So that evidence, while we know that high schools are the main reason people leave the city with their families in 3rd and 4th grade, we believe that the IB program, plus other improvements in high schools, can be the reason people want to stay in the city of Chicago. In addition, I would just say a lot of the school system is focused on K through 12. The city of Chicago is going to a pre-K to college model, and more work on that effort, and I'll talk about that later and what we're doing, would be helpful. In addition to that, I can't say enough about BAM Match and One Summer Plus. When I became in office, BAM was about 400 kids in an experimental program. This year we'll hit 3,000 kids at risk. It is the most important program keeping these young men focused. There's also another program called WOW that helps women that I participated as I did with BAM. It focuses them and keeps them on course in that effort, as does One Summer Plus. The only thing I would ask that would be helpful, and we were talking about this a little earlier, I look at both Tom and Bob on this, is while you have all these categories, parenting would be the biggest benefit that we could see. It's the biggest role I have as a father of 3. It's the thing we all talk about, that it's the hardest job. And while you have all these categories, the single thing that underpins all of them, and what we can do where we can be supporting parents rather than supplementing them with programs, would be the biggest beneficiaries to making sure everybody in the city has a chance at success. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Nutter.
Well, first, I knew I should have asked to go first. It is always tough following my friend, and for our public purposes, I will refer to, of course, as Mayor Emanuel. We're friends. President Zimmer, thank you very, very much, and certainly Roseanna and Tim Knowles, the entire team here. Thanks for the invitation. This is a most exciting announcement for not only Chicago, not only the University of Chicago, but I think for the United States of America. People should be talking about what you're doing here and trying to replicate it all across the United States of America. And as it turns out, of course, you can't do great things without great support. And so to Tom and Margot and Cindy, where I come from in West Philly, which I think might be somewhat similar to the South Side of Chicago, $10 million is a lot of money. And so thank you one more time very, very much for what you've done here. Thank you. It's particularly exciting to be back at the University of Chicago. Other than Philadelphia schools, this is probably the university that I've been to the most outside of my own city, and there's a reason for that. It's because of all the innovative things that you're doing here, the excitement that you put forward, and so there are many lessons. We all use, borrow, sometimes steal ideas, give credit where credit is due. I've borrowed any number of things from Mayor Emanuel and changed the idea a little bit and brought it to Philadelphia. Evidence-based programs focusing on what actually works, while for some of you may sound like just should be the process, I can tell you in public service, often with friends and people and folks who have always done business with the city government, it's actually a brand new thing. The recession, I think, caused many of us to really focus on what is working, why are we doing this, if it's not working, why are we paying for it, and really start to change systems. When you have no money, it really does focus your attention in very, very different ways. And so using the evidence, using the background, using the information, as we're trying to do on the public safety side, partnered with Temple University, doing controlled experiments in public safety with targeted hotspot policing, looking at where we're doing foot patrols in certain neighborhoods and where that activity may not be as intense, and actually measuring the difference between. And in those areas, of course, it's now been proven that hotspot policing and foot patrols, a 25% reduction in crime in those particular neighborhoods. So Commissioner Ramsey requires all recruits out of the Philadelphia Police Department Academy, first year and sometimes for their second year, all foot beats. At the graduation, he welcomes them, encourages them, and suggests that they get a significant number of pairs of Dr. Scholl's because they're going to be using their footwear a lot and may not see a vehicle for some time. Same thing in jobs and job training, and certainly summer jobs for young people. Again, measuring the impact that summer jobs have on issues of public safety, as well as following their development through school. I mean, again, many of these things we know for a fact or we know anecdotally, but having them measured into the investment community, and I know there's a very broad cross-section of foundation and corporate folks here. The one thing I would ask and implore, and then we'll certainly get to the Q&A, when we partner together, most of these challenges are not going to be solved with a 3-year grant. I have the same kind of conversation on the My Brother's Keeper side. I'm very actively involved in that work, Cities United with Mayor Landrieu. These are generational problems. These are long-standing challenges. They will not be resolved in a couple years. And as much as we appreciate all of the financial support, I would encourage you to look at a 10, 15, 20-year horizon. Get in, go deep, stay with us, and you will see results. But sometimes it's not going to be overnight. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Nutter. So I want to start with kind of picking up where we left off, which is you ticked off some of the programs where you've used evidence to really inform your policy making, but also even to leverage some additional funding from outside funders from the philanthropic sector. And I'm wondering if you could maybe do a little bit of a deeper dive for us. I think One Summer Plus, or if there are other examples you'd like to use to kind of walk us through what that process was like and how you've used the findings.
One Summer Plus, while I totally buy in and I agree with Mike on the importance of community policing, because that's trust building and that's the only, you can't be an occupying force from a police department.
Right.
Making sure our kids are in a safe place, in a mentoring place is essential. Mm-hmm. We dramatically as a city went from 14,000 to now 24,000 kids in a summer job program. We knew it would be both good from a paycheck, but all the values that came with it. Right. But those are more than, so those are basically park district, library, other activities. We took a group of kids, 1,000 of them, working with U of C in the crime labs, which are not ready to be camp counselors, but to really give them a job, but with a lot of mentoring during the summer. So half the day, 4 hours out of the 8 hours, are mentoring and other kind of nurturing type activities. And then the social scientists came in to study that group, 1,000 kids, and came in very cynical, saying that they didn't believe it would lead to safety. They were right that it did not lead for safety in June, July, and August. It led for safety June, July, and August, all the way through June, July, and August, and another 5 months after that. It paid a dividend of 16 months of safety and nurturing and on-track educational improvements. Working with the philanthropic community, Magic Johnson, Mark Walters, and Kim Walters, we're going to take that from 1,000 kids out of the 24 up to 5,000 kids in the next 2 years. That's a specific example. Went in, took a kind of, I try to always reserve, while you want to be data-driven, I don't want to be Margaret Mead or Levi Strauss. So these are kids, and we're not doing anthropology. So it was very clear, though, that this group of kids can go from 1,000 to 5, we're going to take it to 5,000, but with a very specific program, separate than just the jobs, all the support, you could have a dramatic improvement with both staying safe, out of trouble, and educational accomplishment. The second one, I would say, in that area is, in the public safety, is BAM, Become a Man. And so much of that was about mentoring these young men to knowing how to handle adversity, conflict, as I always participating in it, they start with, where are you emotionally, where are you physically, where are you intellectually, where are you spiritually, and then you're all in. And they do it in a circle. While I participate, then introduce the president to it, and it's now the young man that introduced him when he introduced his Become a Man initiative was a young man from Hyde Park High School who was part of BAM. And you can see the dramatic life, and I'll tell you one anecdote from him. I'll leave it there. While they went to visit the president on Father's Day, about a couple months ago later, they had signed him a Father's Day card, and one young man said to the president, "That's the first time I've ever signed a Father's Day card." He had not had that experience. Mm-hmm. And so this whole effort of keeping kids and giving them the emotional support that has been absent helps them stay on track, on course, and making the right decisions, because they will face a set of bad decisions. And knowing who they are and what their potential is essential. So those two efforts, One Summer Plus and BAM, Become a Man, have been essential in our kind of public safety initiative in helping kids not only stay out of trouble, I would actually extend it to think of it as making the right choices when they stay out of trouble to stay on the right course. And that has been essential for us as a city.
Great, great. And it's been a real privilege to partner with the city and with the providers delivering these interventions. So thank you. So Mayor Nutter, you have a reputation nationally for being very pragmatic, data-driven, unafraid of tackling big challenges. As I mentioned to you when I saw you earlier, one of the other words that keeps popping up is ethical, which was also nice to see. So, but in regard to tackling big challenges, can you talk a little bit about what some of the challenges are to being data-driven and using this kind of approach? What are some of the challenges and how have you navigated them?
Well, one of the big challenges, it kind of goes back to something I mentioned maybe at the conclusion of my first statement, which is people want results fairly instantaneously. Right? So, if you're going to go through a data-driven process, then you have to have data and accumulate it and research it and analyze it and really kind of figure it out. In the meantime, you've been doing what you've been doing, and the moment the change comes, because in Philadelphia at least, I mean, we embrace change. We love change in Philadelphia, as long as things can stay the same. Love that change. I want someone else to change, not my change, because my thing is good, right? So, and we embrace it and then strangle it to death. So, I think one of the challenges is just really, I mean, it's a big ship. I mean, we're the 5th largest city, 3rd largest city. I mean, these are huge enterprises. I mean, we could have a different discussion about government as business. And so it's really trying to get people on the same page about the change. Why are you doing this? What is this all about? And making some tough decisions. The mayor's had to make some tough decisions. I make tough decisions. This is a tough decision job. It's what this job is. You cannot make everyone happy. And so telling your friends or people you've known for a long time, I know the city government has been funding your program for the last 10 years. Unfortunately, through our data, we realized that you are not really doing a particularly good job. Therefore, I'm not funding your program. Oh, but we've known each other since high school and our grandmoms knew each other, and that's very interesting. I'm not funding your program because we're moving in a different direction. And you'll like me, you won't like me. I mean, that's the way it goes. So that's a part of it. I think getting a team and, big cities, big governments, the people you appoint, I mean, you have a 99.9% assurance that they're actually going to do what you ask them to do. But as we talk about in Philly, probably the same in Chicago, many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the B team in government. Now, I know there are no term limits here in Chicago. There are in Philadelphia. Those are the people in government. We'll be here when you get here. We'll be here when you leave, right? And you're just kind of hanging out. We'll tolerate you for the time that you're here with all your new ideas and your newfangled things. And then we did that before, and it didn't work, so why are we doing it now? We've been able to change some of that mindset in the government. We said we were going to do certain things. We showed you we were going to do certain things. We've been consistent in what we've been talking about. And by the way, it actually works. So maybe you want to get with the program.
Great.
Can
go ahead. I was going to ask you the same question, so go ahead.
Yeah, B team.
I'm going to leave the B team part alone for a second.
Sorry about that.
It's not that. I used to always say that people hate the status quo and they're not too excited by change either. So they kind of got us right where they want us. The one thing I want to say is And this is about picking up on education because so much can be worked there, and a little of what I said on the other piece. When you think about BAM, and this is why I talk about parenting, BAM is giving folks the parent that has been absent. And what we have to figure out is how do you support family rather than supplement it. And it's not that easy to get the clutch and the gas right on that thing. But I can't stress enough that underpinning all the things that you talked about is getting the most important door a child walks through for their life, which is the front door of the home, absolutely right. And supporting people who have not had that. I can't imagine doing my job as a parent without my mother and father, who I wanted to strangle growing up. Now, as you know, as what Mark Twain say, at 12, I concluded my father was a fool. By 18, I was shocked what he learned in only 6 years. That is, you know, where I'm at right now. And so I would just say parenting, as somebody who will use your data, I would love the support of how to help parents be parents. Yeah. And it would go a long way on saving money on the back end. Second, on education. You know, we are growing economically, jobs, et cetera. What you don't want to do is, and this is slightly different in Philly because Chicago and New York is the only cities where the mayor has an influence on the community college. Right. We decided to go to a pre-K to college model. We knew the 6 growth fields for jobs and promising career. So the first term, we reoriented them towards those healthcare, transportation, IT, advanced manufacturing. We have 3,000 kids in the city of Chicago who graduate with a B average and stop at high school. They don't go farther. They don't go to trade, they don't go anywhere else. And they're B average. You know now we're going to do the scholarship, so community college will be free. Because we want to change the model where it is no longer high school graduation is the destination, college is the expectation. And if money is the biggest issue in which kids decide not to go, and your work on education, which has been fabulous on the K to 12, I would say second is help us get to a pre-K to college. The only other thing is, and this goes to what Mike said, we did a review, our own Race to the Top, on early childhood. And we found out a lot of providers were doing very expensive babysitting. So we raised the standards. We cut people that were not meeting the standard. We've raised it. We allowed charters, we allowed the parochial school systems to participate. They came in if they met the academic. And in 1 year, we went from 24% of our kids kindergarten ready to 48% in a single year just by expanding and improving the quality. And again, I can't stress enough helping us think that through and how to make sure it is a parent-based pre-K rather than just pre-K so you don't lose the value of what happens at school.
The mayor's comments reminded me of, there's a model in New York City. The school was called Paul Robeson, partnered with IBM, created a 6-year high school and associates model there. We're looking to do the same thing in Philadelphia. The Community College of Philadelphia is not a part of the city government, but I make all the appointments to the board. And in the last...
We do the same thing. We call them a part of.
Yeah, I understand. Well, in the last go-round, there was a series of seats available, and I knew a candidate that was really, really interested in being on the community college board. So I appointed myself.
How was the vet?
Yeah, it was a tough, rigorous process. It really was. I asked myself a lot of questions. Our city council, we're partnered with them, just passed a bill which will go on our May ballot to create a commission to figure out how to create and fund universal pre-K all across the city of Philadelphia. This is, I mean, it is, and if you talk to the educators, I mean, it's not only what 3 and 4-year-olds are doing, it's also, I mean, it's literally out of the hospital to home, what's going on almost 0 to 3. And so this work, I mean, it's really now, it's 2 decades of active engagement and involvement with young people up through their early 20s. I mean, that is how you're going to move people up through the system, how you're going to lift people out of poverty. But I also want to, again, compliment you. The colleges and universities partnered with cities, and we talked a little bit about this backstage. We talk about cities as the incubators of innovation, but colleges and universities are really the laboratories of development. You're the laboratories of exploration. And so it is a powerful partnership. We have every challenge that you could imagine. You have almost every research capacity that anyone could imagine. If either one of us tried to create our own research and development arms of the city government, I think that's a Chicago Tribune, that's a Philadelphia Inquirer story in the making. But a partnership, a true partnership, colleges and universities and cities all across the United States of America, we would change the dynamic of people's lives, improve our economies, and we'd be a vastly different country if we could figure that out all across America.
Great. Well, we're trying. So I just want to acknowledge, because you have talked about parenting a couple of times, and we agree that it's just a fundamentally important issue for the city and for every city that's grappling with disadvantaged youth and urban challenges. And Marianne Bertrand, who's the director of the Poverty Lab, actually already met with your A team prior to launching the design competition of the Innovation Challenge and talked to them about that as one of the priority areas to surface some of the most innovative and interesting ideas locally grown here in Chicago. So that's absolutely something that we're hoping to find some of the best ideas in Chicago. So that's kind of in the works. And then on the community college side, we've been talking to some of the folks who are also interested in that transition and how to help really rigorously evaluate what's working and what's not. So we're—
Can I posit an
Yes.
idea? A lot of healthcare is going to home healthcare, and we think of it as later in stage. I think you should take that and turn it upside down and do home health care where nurses are visiting actually first-time parents with kids. We think of it as later in life, the best place to help people be parents and get kids on the right track for life, and I would take the home health care model and not use it for later in life, but for the earliest days in life.
Right.
And that type of support we're seeing in the pre-K that we have, that parenting toddler model, dramatically changes the trajectory of that child, and it's early research. So I'm done with, I got my homework assignment, so I'm the last person to give homework to anybody, but that would be, when we think about I don't want to put words in Mike's mouth, and I want to, for all the researchers that have seen this, when you think of everything we face in trying to make sure folks coming out of places where there's tremendous poverty and economic disadvantage and historical, everything that we work with is trying to resolve that issue in one way, from crime to education, to poverty, to environmental injustice. And I can't stress enough of how that really would not only save money, but change the trajectory of these individuals coming from those enclaves of poverty where you're trying to literally have a breakout strategy.
Right. And where that structure is, so I agree with that, but where that structure is not necessarily in place, is then left to the rest of us as society, especially that 13-year-old, the 14-year-old, the 15-year-old, who may not really know much about the world of work and the skills that are necessary and an understanding of what a job is about. Internships, mentorships, summer job, year-round jobs, sponsorship, exposure to the world of work and what that's all about, and trying to change, at least back in Philly, some of the mindset and a corporate culture that rather than being subjected to annual calls from me, can I get 10 jobs, can you do 50 jobs, can you do 100 jobs? It should really just be a part of the corporate mindset that this is what we do. This is how we function in Philadelphia. This is how we, and I can't comment on Chicago because I don't know enough about Chicago, but again, cities all across America, as the business cycle changes and this summer's coming, how many young people can we get in our place, partner with a caring adult who's going to answer their questions, help them understand. You have to get up every day and go to work. You have to be on time every day. You can't curse your supervisor out. You can't quit. You have to understand what this is about, because I talk to young people, when they're 17 years old, not necessarily thinking about in their 20s and 30s, you're going to be an adult in 4 or 5 years. You're going to have to make decisions for yourself. And so getting those employers, so I can't ask folks to do what I'm not prepared to do, so we created something called PowerCorps PHL. It's an AmeriCorps program, partner with young people who have dropped out, now dropping back in. We give them work in the Parks and Recreation Department, in our Water Department. They're cleaning lots, cleaning alleys, learning about stormwater management and environmental services. And then there's an education component to it. And as a result of the 20th anniversary of the AmeriCorps program, when President Obama and President Clinton were together, we changed our rules in Philadelphia. We now give 5 points on our civil service test to any graduate of an AmeriCorps or Peace Corps program when they apply for a job in the city of Philadelphia, to recognize the service they've already given and the opportunity to work in the city government. I mean, we have to also think about how we do those kinds of things.
So, Mayor Emanuel, there's really no shortage of innovation, as you well know, happening already in every neighborhood across this city. Can you talk a little bit about how you and your administration go about really finding the local talent and then embedding a data-driven process in once you find promising programs?
Well, obviously, we work together. We've done that.
It was a softball.
Right, that was a softball. I wake up in the morning and I email you guys, and then you turn your email over to me. Okay? No, there is that effort, and the truth is, both BAM and Match, and the way we've scaled it was a direct relationship, because you guys were talking about this program. It's now at 3,000 kids. That's the good news. The bad news is there's about 9,000 to 10,000 kids, if I read your data correctly, that need to be touched by BAM. We took Match, which was this intensive math tutoring for 9th graders. It showed there's 2 things: 3rd graders on reading, 9th graders on math. That if you can get 9th graders caught up on math, they are more likely to not only finish at graduation, but succeed in every other subject. It was the linchpin academic. We're now at 800 kids from about 200 or 1,500.
1,100 kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and BAM and Match. So those are areas, but there are innovations.
Right.
Now, let me give you another example, which is, and I'm religious about this, which is what I call the food deserts. We now there were 450,000 people that lived, quote unquote, in a food desert in the city of Chicago. In the last 4 years, we reduced that population by 40%. Now, not only is it a benefit from fresh fruits and vegetables within a neighborhood, yes, healthy living, all the other, I'm pointing up as if you have your 5 quotients up here. That's what I'm pointing up to. But second, there's a reason real estate developers, and I somewhat point to Tom on this, call these stores anchors. They bring all the other retail with them. And the reason we've gone after the grocery stores, whether it's Whole Foods in Englewood, and to tell you an example, is that anchors other retail that comes, creates foot traffic. Foot traffic reduces crime and has all the other economic benefits. But Whole Foods and Mariano's, to pick out 2 stores specifically that have met the challenge, are now sponsoring entrepreneur programs where they're literally, for the last year and a half, especially Whole Foods and Mariano's in Brownsville and other communities, there's about 30 or 40 small businesses where we've now created basically collective or communal kitchens.
Right.
So they can get their products on Whole Foods shelves and distribute it and start their own businesses. And so those are ideas that we hear from people and then try to sponsor and then create, I think, innovations that we see all the time. And the last one I would say, and it's not really an innovation particularly. Unfortunately, the secretary left. I'm a big supporter of housing. I think it's great. You look at any community, downtown Chicago, I'll give you an example in my neighborhood. Arts and culture. As a former dancer, I'm all for them for the sublime benefit of the spiritual movement, whether it's physical art, theater. You can't find a place economically succeeding where there is not arts or culture. Can't find it anywhere in the world. We've tried every other effort, housing, grocery stores. Bring art and culture into the economically depressed areas, and I will give you a community that is thriving, both educationally, economically, and a reduction in crime. And that's why we've done what we've done with Theatric Aid. And we talk about our arts program. You have a viable cultural entity. I can give you Lincoln, in our Old Town School of Folk Music on Lincoln Avenue. That place was a gangbang infested neighborhood. You can't touch real estate today, residential or commercial. And I can give you chapter and verse. You can see what the Asker is doing in parts that we are now partnering. And I would strongly urge using, and I say this somewhat reluctantly, the idea of using arts economically rather than for the value it provides in the human spirit. But arts and culture rather than just, here we're going to plop some homes down and there's no grocery store, there's no viable commercial real estate. You are not going to do it on a roof. Not that the roof doesn't count. But bringing along arts and culture can be an incredible turnaround for a neighborhood's economic vitality.
You have a hard stop at 1:30, and David Spielvogel will personally kill me if I don't.
Well, it's better you than me.
Exactly. Yes, we need you. So maybe as you're walking off the stage, I'd love to, we are launching Urban Lab, so if either of you have advice or cautions or anything else, last words, we would welcome those, and hopefully this will be the beginning of a longer partnership with both of you.
One, I mean, at least for me, I'd love to come back and see even more of the work, understand the work. Again, I'm going to take some of those ideas back to Philadelphia. But I would only encourage you, get the word out as broadly and loudly as possible. Again, let people know the kind of support that you have here. How do you recreate this model? This is the kind of thing, in the healthiest sense of the word, this is a good competition. I came to Chicago 8 years ago. Mayor Daley was in office. I'd won the Democratic primary. And really became inspired by much of what goes on here in Chicago from a greening standpoint. He spent about an hour talking to me about trees and planting flowers and making the city beautiful and those kinds of things. His brother teased him later on that day for spending so much time talking about it. But I mean, I came back to Philly and said we should be the #1 green city in the United States of America. It creates jobs like arts and culture. And so let people know what you're doing. Invite more folks out, and I'd love to come back.
Great. We'd love to have you back. So.
The only thing I would say is go big, go bold, and stay within Chicago. I don't really care about Philadelphia.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. So just by way of closure, I want to thank the mayor, Michael Nutter from Philadelphia, and our mayor, Rahm Emanuel. Having such wise souls in charge of our cities is a gift, and which we should appreciate. I also want to thank the Boston Consulting Group, which has done a lot of invisible work to help stand this organization up. And I know there's some BCG people here. And finally, I want to thank the Pritzkers once more for bringing Urban Labs to life. Thank you very much.